Nebraska is shaking up spring ball for college football, but Arizona State should be worried about themselves and not the rest of the nation.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks to all of you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5. If you win, you will score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app today or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into the show. Quite a controversial topic here. Nebraska is canceling their spring football game. How will this affect recruiting moving forward? How does the nation respond? How is ASU going to respond? That's all coming up in the show. But we have to start the conversation with what's going on and what does ASU need to think about what's going on. So if you are in the dark, over the weekend, head coach Matt Rhule from Nebraska, the Cornhuskers, a well-traditioned football program, well-storied, lots of borderline blue blood tradition to themselves. Yeah, Matt Rhule said, we are not having spring ball this year. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. And there's so much to unpack here. First of all, I want to read his direct quote, because when you hear the quote, you can kind of understand how he got here. Direct quote, I pulled this from The Athletic. Quote, to go out and bring in a bunch of new players and then showcase them for all the other schools to watch. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, end quote. Nebraska lost 31 players at the end of the 2021 season just to the transfer portal. Now, we also need to keep in mind that the spring portal will be opening up as well, and this will have another opportunity for these kids to decide to leave the program if they so choose. And obviously, you can bring in kids too. ASU has been on the receiving end of both of those. So I understand the fear of the spring portal. And I have some very, very, what's the word? Harsh thoughts, I guess. Passionate thoughts. There we go. I have passionate thoughts and opinions on the spring portal. To make it short, I don't like it. I think that it needs to be tuned up. It presents this opportunity for these guys, if they get beat out in camp, to just go somewhere else. I'm not a fan of the spring portal, but there's all sorts of stuff that I'm not a fan of when it comes to college football. So Matt Rhule, what he doesn't want is other teams watching the spring game. The spring games, more often than not, are televised. And it's an event for people to turn their TV on. Local fans, obviously, get to see their football team. It's a taste of college football because we only have 4 months, not even 4 months of the year to watch it. So we get it in March or April. It's special to us. And the fans show up and everything. What Matt Rhule is describing here is that other coaches, other players, whoever could be watching Nebraska football and their spring game. And they could say, wow, player X looks really good out there. Richie Bradshaw looks really good out there. I'm going to get in contact with him. There's no tampering, as Matt Rhule would tell you. You can talk to these kids. No one's under a contract. They're just enrolled with the university, but it's very easy to transfer, as we just saw with that kid from Wisconsin, man. Like, they got to get this figured out. And I understand this fear that Matt Rhule has. How should ASU view this? I think it starts with recognizing Rhule's point of view and saying to yourself, yeah, I get it. Like, there is total validity to Rhule's ideology here of, I'm not going to present an opportunity for the other schools across the country, the hundreds of programs, to watch my team play spring ball and then try and pluck them individually. An example, we all know that Dylan Raiola is the starting quarterback for Nebraska. let's say quarterback 2 is Joe Schmo, and Joe Schmo is the second team quarterback against Raiola, who's playing first team. If Schmo goes out and dominates, and I'm a program that needs a quarterback, I'm going to reach out to Joe Schmo and I'm going to say, hey, why would you sit behind Dylan Raiola when you can come play for my program? That's the fear here. And ASU will look at that and they'll go, I get it, because ASU has suffered losses in the spring portal before. Last year, Jaden Rashada, Elijah Badger. Now, they left for different reasons, but nonetheless, this is the problem that you run into with the spring portal. And it's not the first time and it's not the last time that ASU has lost players at the spring portal, not just at the end of the year. This is also an ASU team that has that advantage, right? Like they know how to use the spring portal. We've seen them add guys before. We've seen them take advantage of the spring portal. But this is the Sun Devils team right now that is more focused on its recruiting, and we got a lot to talk about with recruiting later on in the show. They are not trying to stack this team with transfers the way that they were the first 2 years. I imagine if Kenny can avoid the spring portal as much as possible, he would love to do that. They will absolutely add guys. You'll have injuries. You'll have positions that don't look as good as what you thought they were, and they'll add someone. For sure, I promise. But they need to be worried about themselves right now. And that's pretty much the direction that we're going to take moving forward here. For the remainder of the podcast, how does ASU respond? They need to focus on themselves. Now, that doesn't mean they are not keeping tabs on the situation. It doesn't mean that Nebraska pops up on ESPN and they're talking about it and you switch the channel or you turn it off. You need to understand everything that's going on here. But there's also a bigger picture that Matt Rhule is not taking into account. And it's the fact that the spring game is not just for the kids. It's not just a good scrimmage. It's not just figuring out your depth chart and everything like that. It's for the fans. That's the bigger picture. Spring ball is for the fans. I already mentioned this a little bit, but we're going to go all the way in on this now. We get college football for less than 4 months of the year. You've got maybe 2 weeks in August, depending on if you play week 0. You got the full month of September, the full month of October, the full month of November. And if you're lucky, your team will go to a bowl game in December. Or if you're really lucky, your team could go to the college football playoff. That's it. You are guaranteed 3 months of college football, and then we'll see what happens from there. That's not a lot at all. And for diehard college football fans like myself and those who are listening to this podcast, we want as much as possible. We have to go from January until the end of August before we get to watch a college football game. It's not like the NFL, where the NFL runs from, we'll talk regular season. No one cares about the preseason. They run from September to the middle of January now, and they're going to keep expanding it. The rest of January is the playoffs, and now we see the Super Bowl is leaked into the middle of February. Okay, well then after that, you've got free agency frenzy, and everyone loves that. And then you have the NFL draft. Like the only lull time for the NFL is like June and July. The NFL is very good at making themselves year-round. College football can't really do that. It's just not as feasible. You've got 2 portal windows, and quite frankly, I think 2 is too many. But they don't have a draft. They don't have free agency. It's not as easy to market college football the way that you market the NFL. Now, bring that back to how does that affect the fans? Well, fans of NFL teams, yeah, maybe you don't get to see your team play football for a handful of months out of the year. Like we'll say that Cardinal fans, right? Because the team has been down. You will get August with preseason, all of September, October, November, and December, and potentially sometime in January, but at least 1 week in January. That's already significantly more time. That's close to 5 months compared to barely 3 months for college football. And then you got the rest of the offseason too. So for college football fans who don't have the year-round stuff, we love that spring game. It's special. And look at the growth of the spring game the last 2 years alone for ASU. First year that Kenny Dillingham was out here, they had that Bussin' with the Boys pod with Taylor Decker and the linebacker. I can never remember his name. My apologies, my dude. The best part is I think he's hilarious, but I can't remember his name. But Bussin' with the Boys was out here, one of the podcasts. I think they disbanded, but neither here nor there. And they were coaching the maroon and gold team. Like, they just went at it and had fun with each other. That brought a little bit of attention for a team that was coming off a 3-win season. And then this past year, they moved the spring ball game to a Friday night, and the stadium was pretty darn packed. Okay, well, now you're coming off an 11-win season where you went to the college football playoff. I would imagine that the spring ball game is going to be at least as good as it was last year, if not a little bit better. You have an activated Valley. That's what we've been shooting for. And now the fans are interested year-round. So why would you take something away from them? For a team like Arizona State, for a program like Arizona State, where when you're at your best, there's not much stopping you. But when you're not, you've got an uphill battle to face because you just have very fair weather fans, and there's just a lot to do in Phoenix. No one's going to watch a bad football team. You've got this Valley right now, totally activated, borderline wrapped around your finger. Like, they love ASU football. Don't take more of it away from them. It's just hard for me to understand. And again, relating it to Nebraska, they've got super loyal fans too. Those fans have stuck it out for decades now, with Nebraska being not bottom feeders, but certainly not what they were in the 70s and 80s. It's just crazy to me that they would take that away. So ASU, you need to monitor for sure. Keep a tab open. Check the news. What's on ESPN? Oh, they're talking about Nebraska. And then keep it at that. But don't let what's going on right now affect the 2025 spring game. Keep tabs. Think about it in the future if you have to. I think it's a bad idea regardless, but it should not affect ASU this year. The one thing that it could affect is recruiting. That's coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's talk about our friends over at FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss if you're a sicko like me, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. And check this out. If you are brand new to the app, brand new customer, you bet $5, you can win $200 in bonus bets, all by winning your first bet. That's icing on the cake. So download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet $5, and if you win, you'll get $200 in bonus bets back. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Thanks as always for tuning in to Locked On Sun Devils and making us your first listen of the day. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. If there's one area that this could really affect, it is recruiting. It's really something I do not suggest for any program, let alone ASU. Let's talk about the grand scope of things, and then we'll dial into ASU again. The spring game is an important part of the offseason. We already talked about how much the fans love it. We talked about not just how much the fans love it, but borderline how much they need it. They need the spring game. They barely get college football throughout the year, especially teams that aren't competing for national championships, like the Sun Devils the last 10 to 15 years. Like, yeah, they've gone to bowl games more often than not, but that spring game was kind of what helped us get over some of the dog days of summer. We need it. It also helps recruiting, though. And here's how it helps is you get these kids these 16, 17, 18-year-old kids who have the opportunity to go out and visit universities that they will potentially commit to for their future. 5 stars, 3 stars, 4 stars, no stars, whatever. These kids have a chance to go and tour colleges across the country, see what they're all about. Let's go to some practices. Let's see how the coaching staff works with my positional group. Here comes the spring game. Okay. Here's the thing with the spring game. First of all, it's the atmosphere for these kids. So Arizona State has their spring game in Mountain America Stadium. With the show out that they had last year from the fans, and again, I would assume it's going to be bigger next year. Well, this upcoming year, I should say. I would assume there's going to be more people out there, and when you bring in more recruits to see, wow, that's a lot of fans that are invested in this football program, and this is a meaningless scrimmage game. That gets their attention. They also get to be on the field at Mountain America Stadium. They walk through for the first time and they go, wow, this place is so cool. It's so big. It's intoxicating, the atmosphere, the smell of the grass. Like there's something about getting that vibe, walking on a stadium for the first time and seeing the fan attendance and just being a kid who's going around the country and has this opportunity before he even commits to a school to walk onto the field. Yeah, I can picture myself here. Yeah, I can picture. Is that the Pat Tillman statue? I would love to run through the Pat Tillman statue. That's the student section ahead of us. That's the Inferno. Yeah, I love that. This is them visualizing that kind of stuff for ASU. Let's take that ASU perspective now. Your recruiting is trending up. It's not just the football winning games. It's not just statistics that are getting better and guys that contend for the Heisman and whatever. The recruiting is getting better progressively each year. ASU is getting 4 stars on a regular basis right now. And I know the rest of the country might be laughing. Where's your 5 stars? Well, I've got kids who want to play football more than anything. But if you do care about stars, they had a almost 5-star in their first class coming off a 3-win season with Jaden Rashada. Last season, they had 2 4-stars, Jaden Fortier and Jason Brown. Fortunately, we didn't get to see much of them. This year, Cam Dyer's a 4-star. AJ Ia is a 4-star. We won't see Dyer. We're going to see Ia more than likely. Next year, 2026, you already have Jake Fetty, who is committing to the program. He is a 4-star quarterback. ASU is doing a good job with recruiting. And I can't definitively tell you if a 4-star comes out to Arizona State, they go to the spring game and they go, yep, that's my decision. But I can tell you that it matters. It does matter. It's an experience for these kids to check out and just to kind of get that taste of what is it like to be in Mountain America Stadium? What is it like to have these fans, these super dedicated Arizona State Sun Devils fans that are just listening and howling and cheering? It's so much fun for these recruits, these 16, 17-year-old kids who are trying to decide their future. It's like that across the country. It's like that for ASU. And with the way that the coaching staff is just proving to these kids over and over the last several years that, hey, we know what we're doing. You come here and you're going to work hard, but we're going to get you prepared for future roles and everything. Okay, here's some more aesthetics for you. Here's how fun the stadium is. Here's the energy. Also, keep in mind that ASU didn't have a regular scrimmage game last year. They were doing all sorts of stuff. 2-point conversions. They had punting contests. They had fielding contests. Like it was so unique. It wasn't 60 minutes of gridiron. It was different, and it got people in the seats. And that's another way you can get these kids out here is they go, well, I've seen a ton of football. Let me see something a little more interesting. What if a recruit doesn't make the game? Well, they can tune in. These games are broadcast. And I'm not saying it's an easy way to find a broadcast for this game. Like if I'm in Wisconsin and I'm trying to find the ASU spring ball game, probably going to have a difficult time. However, at least they have the option to find a way to tune in and see what's going on. Nebraska's not going to have that. Some of their recruits in Florida or Seattle, they're not going to be able to find a Nebraska spring game to watch and see what it looks like. Nope, they don't have that option. ASU, they provide that option. So if you can't get to ASU for the spring game, your school schedule is lined up, maybe you have a different visit that weekend, at least you can tune in. But this means a lot for recruiting and means a lot to the fans. When those things come together, your football program gets better. The recruits bring the traction of the fans. Oh, wow. Look at this 4-star quarterback, Sam Levitt. Look at this 4-star quarterback, Cam Dyer. Look at this 4-star quarterback, Jake Fetty. I'm going to go invest. And then the flip side, Sam Levitt is sitting there and he goes, wow, that's a lot of fans. Jake Fetty, wow, that's a lot of fans. Cam Dyer, wow, that's a lot of fans. Look at the fan support. Everything culminates together now. ASU, they need to focus on right now. Here's something I want to lead with to kind of round out this segment and then to honestly round out the show. If a kid wants to transfer, they're going to transfer. If a kid wants to transfer, they're going to transfer. Put that in your head right now. At the end of the day, the transfer portal has been a huge, huge thing for years now. I doubt that canceling a spring game, or at a minimum not broadcasting it or allowing the public to see it, which at that point, what is the point? I doubt that's going to be the reason why we see Nebraska fall apart or see all their players leaving. It may not be enough to, let's try this again. I'm trying to read my notes. Like I said, if a kid wants to transfer, they will. The TV time, it could sway a kid one way or the other, but it does affect recruiting more because it gives the kids a chance to tune in. Maybe it affects the guys that are there, but I'm trying to play for the future too. How's the rest of college football going to respond, and what is the final way that ASU needs to respond? That's coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. One more time, thanks to all of you guys for tuning in to make Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day. And a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Let's go ahead and wrap up this bad boy. How is the rest of college football going to respond? Well, I think that you're going to end up seeing these programs respond on a case-to-case basis. Everyone is going to be watching what happens to Nebraska. Let's say they stick to their word and they don't have their spring game. And again, it's not like a smaller school is doing this. This is a Power 4 program with a lot of history behind it. They're trending in the right direction. They got a 5-star quarterback. Former number 1 overall recruit is leading that charge. This is a big deal for them to not have spring ball. If the idea is successful, in a perfect world, nobody from Nebraska transfers at the end of spring ball. Okay, well, maybe there's something there. Probably shouldn't overreact to one season of doing it. Maybe we'll watch for a second season. Okay, no one transferred again. There might be something here. And then you could start seeing teams, other programs that go, you know what? We're not going to have our spring game either because we just lost 12 kids to the transfer portal at the end of the spring ball. There is that possibility that you start seeing these teams lean the direction that Nebraska is starting. Nebraska is a trailblazer for this. I can't think of another time that I've seen a team purposefully cancel their spring game without it being for any outside reasons. Like, this isn't because of weather. This isn't because of any kind of scheduling conflicts. This is flat out like, hey, we just don't want to do this. Like, we're not going to do this. This is the way that we see the best path forward for us. This is the way that we think we will protect Nebraska football, is to not have the spring game. It's interesting. It's a very, very interesting philosophy. And I really do think that this is going to be a case-by-case basis. I don't think it's going to be the same at every school. If Alabama decides to cancel their spring game, I think that it's going to be a very different reaction than what you get at Nebraska. If U of A cancels their spring game, it's going to be a very different reaction than what happens at Alabama. UCLA, Michigan, you pick a school, it's going to have a different reaction every single time. It's just the nature of college football. There's almost no, what's the word? Not, no, what I'm trying to say is there's so much individuality that you rarely see instances where it's like completely identical of like, oh, Nebraska didn't have any transfers. Well, these 5 schools are not going to do it. Oh, those 5 schools also did not have transfers. Like, it's just rare that we see that. Let's wrap it up with the ASU perspective here. ASU, as we said, needs to worry about itself. You do not need to worry about what another program is doing, especially when you are in a rebuilding stage. Now, ASU's rebuilding stage has gone really, really fast. The reality is we're still in a rebuilding stage. However, we're just way ahead of the curve and we're way closer to competing than we are being bottom feeders. This is still a rebuilding program. They're rebuilding their image. They're rebuilding their identity. They're rebuilding the consistency on a year-to-year basis. There's no guarantees that we go bowling again next year. This team could fall flat on its face. They could not get 6 wins. Or they could win 10 games again in the regular season and go to the playoff. So they need to focus on themselves, not what Nebraska's doing, not what Bama's doing, not what U of A is doing, just what ASU is doing. Worry about yourselves. Here's some solace for you. Kenny Dillingham is going to be 35 this year. Still one of the youngest head coaches in college football. I think there's someone who is younger than him now. He understands the landscape. He understands the way that college football is working right now, the trends of how everything is unfolding, how it's going to continue to unfold, how it evolves and everything. That's one of the reasons why NIL is climbing for ASU. That's one of the reasons why ASU has been so aggressive and successfully aggressive in the transfer portal. It's because Kenny Dillingham gets how it works. He also makes sure to incorporate traditions for ASU. So he's going to look at this and he's going to evaluate how this affects ASU by itself, not how it affects everyone else. Okay, well, let's look at ASU. We're talking about traditions. Well, what traditions? Well, Camp T is a thing. They weren't doing Camp T before Kenny got here. That's back. Their spring games, much more involved with the community. The NIL is starting to get up. People are getting invested. There's just stuff that matters here. There's also the fact that Kenny is not dumb. And if this truly is a trend, if this is seriously a successful stunt that is pulled off by Nebraska, and for the next 3 to 4 years, we see that Nebraska football is a program that brings in transfers and guys don't leave, you will reevaluate. But Kenny is going to be worried about Arizona State Sun Devils football before he is worried about anything else. If it's for the best, he's going to adjust. I promise you. But until then, he's going to be worried about himself. And again, if the kid wants to transfer, he's going to transfer. At the end of the day, Kenny Dillingham can have a silver tongue and just be able to get inside of your ears and convince you to do anything. He can Jedi mind trick you. If a kid wants to transfer, he's going to transfer. They have the power right now to be able to do that. They can do almost whatever they want. I lost a competition. Okay, see ya. I'm going to go play for another program. They can do it. There's some stuff that you just can't control. For all we know, this could lead to more transfers for Nebraska. We'll have to wait and see. For now, do not worry about the paranoia that Nebraska is worrying about. Worry about you. Worry about the way that you are building this program. Trust yourself. Trust the foundation that you are laying. Understand that this direction you're going right now has helped recruiting drastically. Why would you change it? Whatever you're doing, it's working. And the spring game is important. Spring game is very, very, very important. What happens next? Take it with a grain of salt. Worry about yourself. The kid wants to transfer. He's going to transfer. One last thought. Matt Rhule, the head coach of Nebraska, does not make decisions for college football. He makes decisions for Nebraska. So just because Matt Rhule's doing something doesn't mean everybody needs to do it. Stick to what works. Right now, this is working for ASU. If Kenny Dillingham thinks they need to adjust, they will adjust. If they do decide to adjust, then you better believe that we're going to keep you up to date here on Locked On Sun Devils. Now's never been a better time to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you get your shows. Let me know in the comments, do you think that Nebraska is overreacting, or do you think that they're doing a very smart thing? And do you think ASU should do it? Again, drop a comment. You can always hit me up on Twitter too at Richie Bradshaw36. The podcast is there at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your shows, hit like, hit subscribe, and turn on those notifications. You'll get an update whenever we post new content. Again, I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. And a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. You guys do not want to miss tomorrow's episode. We have got to talk about the man himself, Bobby effin' Hurley. Is it time for him to go? Well, we've got a game tonight to figure out what we're going to do. Things aren't looking good right now for ASU basketball, so make sure you tune in tomorrow. We're going to talk about Bobby Hurley and more. I will see you there, and until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.